I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. The MAGA Republican leaders all went out to Indianapolis, where the NRA was holding their convention, to celebrate the death and destruction that weapons of war have caused in our country. And these speeches by these MAGA Republican leaders were so weird, so deranged. I'm going to show you some of the clips of these speeches right now. And you had former Vice President Mike Pence, you had the governor of South Dakota, the MAGA Republican Kristi Noem. Of course, you had Donald Trump give a speech and some others. So let's just go through and give you the lowlights of these speeches. Well, here is former Vice President Mike Pence, who's absolutely hated in the MAGA Republican cult movement because he refused to overturn the results of a free and fair election. Here's Pence getting booed as he shows up to give his speech. Play the clip.
Well, hello, NRA. I love you too. And welcome back to the Hoosier State.
Now, here is MAGA Republican Governor Kristi Noem, and this is kudos to the camera person from the C-SPAN who was controlling the camera. You had Governor Kristi Noem say, "The NRA is not just a bunch of white men. We are really diverse." And then watch the C-SPAN pans to the audience, and it's all white men. Play this clip.
Now, I probably don't look like a traditional NRA member. The media would have us believe that the NRA is only made up of old white guys. And all you old white guys can be proud and raise your hands. But there's a lot of other people, a lot of diversity within the NRA. Well, let me tell you something. I may be a mom and a grandma, but I am the NRA.
Here is MAGA Republican Governor Kristi Noem bragging about how her 2-year-old grandchild has a rifle now and holds a rifle. Play this clip.
Little Miss Addie, who is almost 2, and Branch, who's just a few months old, they have brought us so much joy. They've brought us purpose. Now, Addie, who, soon will need them, I want to reassure you, she already has a shotgun and she already has a rifle. And she's got a little pony named Sparkles, too, so the girl is set up.
I mean, in what world are we talking about where you've got politicians bragging about how their 2-year-old grandchildren have rifles? Why would a 2-year-old need a rifle in the first place, other than this MAGA Republican fascist cosplay that they engage in? This is a MAGA Republican presidential candidate who's very influential, actually, in this MAGA movement. His name is Vivek Ramaswamy. And here Vivek talks about one of the major MAGA Republican talking points, how they want to completely shut down the FBI. Play this clip.
I've also said that we need to go further. When you have an agency like that FBI that told Martin Luther King he couldn't have that concealed permit, that now tells conservatives effectively the same thing, politicizing the police state against them, you can't reform that from the top down. That is why I've said what you're not supposed to say, but I'm saying it tonight. I will say it again. We will shut down the FBI and replace it with a police apparatus that actually respects the law instead of making it up.
And they want to shut down the FBI because the FBI is engaging in investigations of domestic terrorism. And because the FBI has investigated Donald Trump, that's why they want to defund and completely dismantle law enforcement in furtherance of their cult. This is the leader now of the NRA, Wayne LaPierre. And the head of the NRA, Wayne LaPierre, says that politicians should fear us, should fear the NRA when they go to sleep if they ever tried to do anything to restrict gun use. Play this clip.
I don't care how many billionaires, TikTok stars, or Hollywood airheads they've got. Hear this. Gun-hating politicians should never go to bed unafraid of what this association and all of our millions of members can do to their political careers. Because you fight like hell for freedom, and you get more of it.
Yeah, so there you have the head of the NRA basically threatening politicians that if they enact common sense gun reform that all Americans want, that he's going to retaliate against them. And by the way, the same way that Donald Trump is basically, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down, but there's actually nothing to it, right? It's all kind of bark and no bite. But the MAGA Republicans fall prey to that, though, just completely all the time. Like Wayne LaPierre is a complete freaking clown. Like the NRA is completely bankrupt. He's like had to funnel in foreign money. He's gotten like serious sanctions against him by federal courts who have looked at the structure of the NRA. Like it's actually a very weak organization from the perspective of its actual infrastructure. Yet for MAGA Republicans, when you make threats like that, they're just like, oh, I guess I'm going to have to do everything you say there. Just again, completely deranged. So then you have Donald Trump gives his speech. He begins his speech by mocking Mike Pence and basically saying, well, did you give Mike Pence a warm welcome? Knowing that everyone booed him. Play this clip.
And if you take a look, this week's morning console poll, I led the field by 33 points with Trump 56, DeSantis 23, Pence 5. I hope you gave Pence a good warm approval. Because he is a nice man, if you want to really know the truth. He's a good man. And I heard it was very rough. It's a big news story. You've made news today. I don't know what you did, but you made news today with the introduction you gave. And Nikki Haley, that's a beauty. She's at 4, and Abbott's at 1. I don't think Abbott's going to run.
Okay, now here Donald Trump talks about, and this is a common thing he talks about in his speeches, it's just completely disgusting, where he goes, there are 2 N-words that you can't talk about. Here, play this clip.
Most dangerous time in the history of our country because of the power of weaponry, and I'm not talking about rifles now. You know what I'm talking about. The N-word. Can't use the N-word. 2 N-words you can't use. You can't use the nuclear word. The power of these weapons is so, and I would never talk about it. I didn't talk about it, and now it's talked about every single day, including by Putin.
And then right after saying there are 2 N-words that you can't talk about, then Donald Trump says that guns aren't the problem. The problem is thugs. Here, play this clip.
But let's be very clear. The issue is not too many guns. The issue is too many thugs, hoodlums, and savage criminals on our street. That's really what the issue is.
Then Donald Trump attacks Bill Barr and calls Bill Barr a rhino. Play this clip.
Now with the prosecutors, these Marxist prosecutors who release rapists and murderers while persecuting conservatives. On day 1 of my new administration, I will direct the DOJ with a very strong leader, not like Barr, not like Bill Barr. What a disaster he was. He was a rhino. He was afraid of being impeached. Please, I don't want to be impeached. So how do you not get impeached? Don't do anything. You don't do anything. Remember, they were going to impeach him, and then all of a sudden, he actually said, no, he didn't see any wrongdoing in the election. My young son, very young, saw a lot of wrongdoing in the election. Did anybody in this room, can they say they didn't see any wrong? That was the worst horror show. I think one of the greatest criminal acts ever, the election of 2020. But we will turn that around, and it'll be even bigger.
Then Donald Trump attacks the prosecutors and the prosecution of a Texas murderer who killed a protester following the murder of George Floyd, one of the protesters who were protesting with Black Lives Matter protesters. And the murderer had posted all of these kind of racist statements, had said, I'm going to kill these people, and much more horrific and racist terms than that, and kind of in a premeditated way, then killed a protester. And all the MAGA Republicans are rushing to the defense of the murderer, who was convicted by a jury recently of murder. And this is what Donald Trump says about that. Play this clip.
To restore our Second Amendment, we will pass legislation protecting the absolute right to self-defense with federal penalties for prosecutorial abuse, like we saw just recently in Texas. You saw that. where a man was trying to defend himself and they want to put him in jail for the rest of his life.
Then Donald Trump just randomly starts putting up tweets that show his polling numbers relative to DeSantis. Play this clip.
In a two-way poll of Florida last week, it was Trump 47 and DeSantis 32%. And there was another poll in Florida where Trump was at 80 and DeSantis was at 15. That's a Florida poll. In Texas, it's Trump 52%, DeSantis 20, Pence 5, Haley 4. You know, the only way we can lose is if we go prevent defense. Do you agree? Do you know what that means? Right? In football, where they're holding the team to no score and then they go prevent the last 2 minutes and they lose the game. We will never go prevent.
And then Donald Trump talks about how he wants to, if he's elected, he would direct the FDA. One of his main priorities is to direct the FDA to investigate trans hormone therapies. Play this clip.
We also need to drastically change our approach to mental health. Upon my inauguration, I will direct the FDA to convene, and it's going to happen quickly, to convene an independent outside panel to investigate whether transgender hormone treatments and ideology increase the risk of extreme depression, aggression, and even violence. I think most of us already know the answer, don't we? Furthermore, we have to look at whether common psychiatric drugs, as well as genetically engineered cannabis and other narcotics, are causing psychotic breaks. A lot of problems. We're having problems that we've never seen before, and people sort of think they understand why.
Here, Donald Trump brags about one of the policies he wants to implement is a national concealed carry reciprocity. Play this clip.
And I will ask Congress to send a bill to my desk to lure national concealed carry reciprocity. You want protection. Just like your driver's license or your marriage license, your Second Amendment must apply across state lines. It will. We'll get it done pretty quickly, too.
Here, Donald Trump brags about trying to stop Obama's prohibition on the proliferation of 3D gun manufacturing. Donald Trump, big fan of 3D gun manufacturing. Here, play this clip.
I fought Obama's unconstitutional effort to ban 3D printed guns.
And then finally, Donald Trump talks about how during COVID, which he calls the China virus because he is a racist maniac, he explains how he designated guns and ammunition to be critical infrastructure, so there would not be limitations. Play this clip.
When the radical left Democrats tried to use COVID to shut down gun sales during the China virus pandemic, I proudly designated gun and ammunition retailers as critical infrastructure. Do you remember that? Little things like that. It saved all of them. A lot of them are in the room with us today.
You know, look, folks, Americans want common sense gun reform, right? There is no, my own views, I'll share them with you, is that I believe under the Second Amendment, people have the right to bear arms. That doesn't mean they have the right to bear weapons of war without any regulations. To me, it's very simple what the Second Amendment says. It says a well-regulated militia. It has the word regulation and it has the word militia. And if you look elsewhere in the Constitution, the idea of the militia is not something that overthrows the government, but actually suppresses insurrections. That's actually what's written in the Constitution. And so when we talk about well-regulated, let's just think about our military for a moment. When our military has the military version of the AR-15, they're trained in it. They have to pass tests to use the weapons, and they have to be significantly trained in it. So at the most basic level, if we're requiring members of our military to have training and to pass tests and to have common sense regulations before they use the weapons of war, why in the world do we have the proliferation of those same weapons of war to civilians who are inexperienced, who don't know how to use it, people who don't have credit, who can't even pass some of the most basic background checks? It makes absolutely no sense at all here, folks. And common sense gun reform to take away weapons of war, That's what we're talking about here. Weapons of war is something that Americans universally embrace. It is absurd when you see those photographs of those MAGA Republican politicians cosplaying with these guns. They're not even holding the guns correctly. And they're in front of Christmas trees and they're with their 2-year-old grandkids holding these weapons. It makes absolutely no sense at all. It is incredibly dangerous. And by the way, as I've always said, weapons for hunting, weapons for self-defense. Yes. And, and people who I think are experienced gun owners, people who are responsible gun owners, who I talk to and I know almost universally say, look, as a responsible gun owner, I know that I'd pass any exam. I know I'd pass any test. I'm fine doing background checks because I'm a responsible gun owner. And I don't want irresponsible gun owners, having these weapons of war. It's dangerous to everyone. It's dangerous to civilians. It's dangerous to law enforcement. It's dangerous to everyone. And we've seen the deadly consequence of this almost every day here. And there is a reason why America is in a kind of unfortunate category of its own in the world for these mass shootings. And it's because of events like this. We have a political party, this MAGA Republican Party. This isn't a both sides issue that worships this cosplay fascism, that worships these weapons of war, and they speak about it in these terms that you're just seeing right there that are so illogical, that are so performative, and that are so disgusting. And, we have to call it out. That what you see right there, and for all the people who watch this internationally, that's not really what America is. Like 75% of America at this point isn't like that. Yet because of gerrymandering and, and all of the ways that MAGA Republicans try to suppress the votes, that has an outstretched reach that is not consistent with where the American people is. So it's incumbent upon all of us, the exhausted majority, to do something about it and to make sure our voices are heard and to not be silent in the face of that fascist dystopian nightmare that the people you just saw speak want to create. So it is an honor to be a part of this pro-democracy movement with you. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We are on our way to 1.5 million subscribers thanks to your support. It's free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, so hit subscribe. Also, wherever you get your audio podcast, just search MeidasTouch Podcast and make sure you download the podcast there for free, and check us out at patreon.com as well. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas. Have a great day. Hit subscribe.
Lock him up! Indictment season is upon us. Celebrate with the new Indictment season t-shirt and v-neck exclusively at store.meidastouch.com.